This is the Fitness Wisdom Podcast.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode. Today I'm going to be talking with Zacharia Zenios. He's a structural soft tissue therapist and he also has a master's degree in exercise and nutrition sciences, and we're going to be talking about the importance of functional training, mobility and mindful movement in our daily lives. So stay tuned for this awesome episode, and we're going to be talking about a bunch of other things as well. So make sure that you read the description after I've posted it so you know what's actually in the content. Tell us who you are and what you actually do before we get into it.
Yeah, so my name is Zacharia Zenios. I do many things. For one, I'm a functional fitness coach. I've been a personal trainer for many years. But right now I'm really focusing more on, it's called neurosomatic therapy. So if you've ever heard of neuromuscular, it's very similar. We just added the organ work as well as cranial work. So it's a different type of body work. It's not like regular massage therapy. Like people come to me, they're in pain, we get them out of pain. But I'm also a movement coach, a personal trainer, all these different modalities and tools that I have to help people move better, get out of pain, feel better, be better. So
Awesome. Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, I actually wanted to study something like, massage therapy or manual therapy in the past, but I never got around to doing it. But I have a big passion also for, touching the body and finding, what's going on inside and manipulating the body from the inside out, because I feel like you can do so much from a movement perspective, but at some point you do need to have some hands-on or to be able to dig in there, to be able to manipulate maybe the nervous system or the organs or the fascia, like you just mentioned.
yeah, I mean, that's the big thing is actually, I don't ever call myself a healer. It's more that we facilitate healing. It's
Yeah.
actually the person, they're doing the healing. And so then, like you mentioned, the nervous system is huge. So we'll find these trigger points or these spots of adhesions, spots of, we call noxious proprioception, where there's too much stimuli going there and it's reducing their ability to move, and we actually have them breathe. It's very important. The breathing is key with the type of work I do because it's their nervous system that actually lets go and restores proper function. So
Interesting.
it's very important that the person connects with their body. And the best success I have is with people who are already have some kind of movement practice or some kind of mindfulness where they're in tune with their body. Because I'll be like, trigger points are key as well. So I'll find somewhere, let's say a very common one is the upper trap. So people with neck pain or, they're working at a desk all day. When I go into that upper trap, it's actually the most common trigger point in the entire body is when I come here and I grab it, they feel it right here in the temporalis. And so that's being affected by tension here. And there's all kinds of weird trigger points. It's actually really fascinating, and it's a really fun profession because you're always learning something new. Like I'll hit someone in their quad, and then they're feeling it in their opposite shoulder, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that's interesting. The way the body works is I'm learning every day.
Yeah. Are you also WEC method certified?
Yeah, so I did the WEC method 3 day, or it wasn't 3 day. Actually, it was 1 day. His 1 day course. So I did that as well, and I incorporate WEC method as well as other modalities. I'm not specific like one thing. I actually studied what the WEC method is about,
Yeah.
and it's about the spinal engine,
Yeah.
as you know. Like it's
Yeah.
about the spine being the originator of movement. But
Yeah.
then I also, I really vibed with something that's like functional patterns, where it's more about the myofascial lines.
Yeah.
And Weck and Naudi's the guy who created functional patterns. They are very, especially more on the FP side. It's like my way or the highway. It's like everyone else is wrong. FP is the only way, and it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
bro, you guys are talking about the same thing,
Yeah.
just in different language. And for
Exactly.
me, I like taking a bit of this, taking a bit of that,
Yeah.
finding what works for me and finding what works for the people I work with.
Yeah. Take what works and discard the rest.
Exactly.
So you mentioned about breathing and about the importance of breathing in your work when you're doing, manual therapy on people and helping them out of pain. So that was one of my last questions that I have here for our interview. So I would like to start with that. since we're already on that point, and how important it is to actually know how to breathe correctly, even not necessarily even when you're doing these type of treatments, but in general, like in daily life. Like, how would you explain to somebody how they should actually breathe in daily life, even when they're not exercising, as an example?
So I also come from the yoga background. I've been a yoga teacher. I got my 200 hour back in 2018, and I've taught yoga for since then, really. I don't teach anymore. But when it comes to breathing, the most common misconception is this concept of belly breathing, right? We
Mm,
all hear of belly breathing, and the idea is that we're chest breathers, or we
mhm,
breathe with our chest. And so, if you can breathe down into your belly, that's the way that your lungs are meant to
mhm,
work. You're breathing with your diaphragm and all of this. And I
mhm,
actually think that that's a misconception
mm.
because it's not so much belly breathing; it's more 360-degree entire body breathing. So it's not just your belly expanding out and going back. Your belly does move a little bit, but the only reason why the belly is moving is because the diaphragm's coming
Yeah,
down. Your ribs also have to expand in all directions. And this is where most people have trouble with, is actually expanding the ribs in all directions. This is key. So the belly in yoga, it's called the dirga breath, the three-part breath. So the breath starts down in the belly. The belly moves a little bit. Then it moves up to the ribs, 360 degrees, and then finally a little bit of lift in the sternum. So not the
mhm,
shoulders or not the collarbones, but
mhm,
just a little bit of a lift in the sternum. And then
mhm,
when you let the breath out, it's in a relaxed way and you just let it all out.
mhm.
So that's the way that the body's breathing, whole body breathing,
Right.
and then nasal breathing is key as well.
Mhm,
Right? I say all the time, the mouth is for eating, the nose is for breathing. Mouth is also for talking, I guess, but the nose, and I'm sure you know the extensive benefits of breathing with your nose. I
yeah.
mean, all the way from filtering the air, warming the air, or cooling the air, depending on what the temperature is, to the Bohr effect of carbon dioxide, and it keeps the proper amount of carbon dioxide, so your body actually utilizes the oxygen.
Yeah.
Um, so I work with people all the time that are mouth breathers,
Mhm,
and they it's very key that people start getting used to breathing with their nose. So that's like the two main things with
mhm,
breathing: breathing
mhm,
with your nose, as well as whole body breathing. Belly, ribs, and chest all move in synchronicity, and that's a
mhm,
big part of my work as a neurosomatic therapist, is reducing tension in any area of the body that is restricted with breath, like the diaphragm. I'd go in there and I
mhm,
work on the diaphragm.
mhm,
A big one for people that don't understand is actually, you've heard the psoas muscle, right? Your biggest hip flexor. It actually connects directly with the diaphragm. So people with dysfunctional hip flexors, people who sit a lot, people whose psoases are either tight or weak or a combination, almost always have problems with their diaphragm. And when you have a problem with your diaphragm, you're not going to breathe properly.
mhm.
And we breathe every single moment of our lives.
Yeah.
So it's very important to improve our breathing.
Wow, those are all really fantastic points. So what you just basically said was that, it's not only important like how we breathe, but also to understand if we have some blockages along the way, in our musculoskeletal system, how can we manipulate those by doing self-myofascial release or going to specialists like yourself, to have these areas of the body released, because sometimes, it's kind of hard if you're doing self-myofascial release to, to dig in there and get in all the right places, especially when you don't know what you're doing, right? So,
I like to empower people to
mhm.
be able to. I do teach people how to self massage. Like some
Yeah.
of the most basic ones is like your sternocleidomastoid, which is
Hmm.
this
Yeah.
muscle up here. It's a big point of the vagus nerve, and I do a lot of work with the vagus nerve
Yeah.
because I've done hiatal hernia healing, and
Hmm.
I've helped people, and the vagus nerve is integrated. But I teach
Mm.
people how to like treat certain things themselves that are easy. But like
Yeah.
you said, people who don't, especially people who are not connected with their body at
Mm.
all, They don't know what they're doing. They don't have the palpation skills, so they don't know what to feel. They don't know what they're like, and so they're not going to get much benefit. Also, your own nervous system is going to hold you back from
Mhm.
reaching that
Yeah,
level of therapeutic pain,
yeah.
because you got to reach a little bit of the pain,
Mm,
like a hurt so good type of
mm,
pain, to
mm,
really create change in the body. And most, as
mm.
much as I want to like help people so they do it on their own, it really, they have to find like a trained therapist to do the deep work, because I mean there's a lot of things they can't do on their own, and even if they could, they don't have the experience or the feel, you know.
Yeah. And everything that we just said, I think these are all fantastic points. And another thing is that why it's so important to nasal breathe is because I like to see like nasal breathing and mouth breathing as different gears of the nervous system, right? So like mouth
Yeah.
breathing isn't inherently bad. Like there is a reason why you are designed and able to
Hmm.
mouth breathe. And the reason is because, if you want to run away from a threat or you want to, activate your sympathetic nervous system, you need to be able to take a big gasp because this is going to
Hmm.
automatically turn on your sympathetic nervous system to be able to, be focused and to not pay attention to anything else. But we don't want to be in that state 24/7, right? Because we know that we cannot heal, regenerate, detoxify, and get better in a sympathetically dominant state. We want to be in a
Hmm.
parasympathetic state, and that's exactly why we want to be nasal breathing the majority of the time. But as you said as well, like if someone has some kind of musculoskeletal problem, that could be preventing them from nasal breathing as well if they are finding it's like super uncomfortable to breathe deep because their lungs are they just don't have room to go down because there is this blockage, right?
Hmm.
So then their upper respiratory breathing, even if they are going to try and take a big deep breath, and this is where like myofascial release techniques and all the work that you do comes in. So let's get into functional training now then. So I think that we've laid a great foundation for everybody to understand that it's so important to take care of your nervous system no matter what you're trying to do, right? Because it's so important to take care of your nervous system because if you're fried, it's probably not the best thing to exercise. It's probably better to just move your body and to not break down muscle. But if you do have a well and functioning system, you want to, do exercises which are going to benefit your body and not harm your body. So why is it important for us to do functional exercise in our life and in our training routines?
Well, I mean, I think we should define what functional means, you know, because I think everybody might have their own definition of it.
That was my next
To
question.
Yeah, to me, it's simple. Our bodies have been designed for very specific things, and as we evolved, we adapted to those things that set us apart from, the rest of the animal kingdom. And there's certain things that we evolved to do. Sprinting is probably at the top of the line. So anything that helps you, not even for a lot of people who are not in shape, let's regress sprinting to running and then just to walking, just moving horizontally through space. So
Mm,
working on exercises that help your walking pattern, or also called your gait.
yeah.
And then as you progress, you work into being able to sprint better. Um, Lifting objects. Now this is key, because when I say, we are meant to lift things, what's the number one thing that people go to? The barbell deadlift, right? Now, I used to have deadlifting used to be my favorite exercise. When I was in the military, I that was I was 190 pounds and I deadlifted over 600 pounds.
Wow.
I don't have the kilogram, the kilo equivalent of that in my head. American,
Well,
we
that's probably
use
250 kilos, probably, or something like
something like that. Um, really heavy, right? And I prided myself. I was like, hell yeah, I'm lifting all this weight. Ultimately, it causes problems. And we can get into why that is. I don't believe barbell deadlifting heavy weight is functional at all.
that.
If you want to lift heavy weight, I believe sandbags are the place to go.
Mm,
So you take someone who can lift 600-pound deadlift, right? Let's say I can lift 600 pounds, and you tell them to lift a 200-pound
mm,
sandbag, which is literally a third of the weight, they're
mhm,
probably going to struggle with it.
mhm.
And the reason why, let me ask you a question. What in nature, what in the real world is like a barbell,
Yeah.
where you can symmetrically load the weight, perfectly symmetrical on both sides, where you have really good leverage because the barbell, if you look at the center of gravity, the center of gravity of the weight is directly below
Yeah.
yours, which is
Yeah.
why you're able to handle so much weight with a barbell deadlift.
Mhm.
There's nothing like that in nature, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
so with a sandbag, like a heavy one, even 200 pounds is a really heavy sandbag.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have to reach around and grab it, right? So you have to like bear
Okay.
hug it.
Yeah.
That weight is pulling you forward, right? Your center of gravity is more forward, which means your posterior chain, the back of your body, has to work more to prevent you from falling forward,
Yeah.
which means you're not going to be able to handle as much weight, which for some people will say is not as good. The barbell is optimal because you can increase the load. But when I think about it from a longevity standpoint, think about the top of a deadlift. When you're at the top and you're standing up, all of that weight is going directly, it's an axial load directly on your spine, compressing the hell out of your spine. And I see, especially power lifters, when I work on power lifters, they're the worst people to work on because they have the most dysfunction in their body for different reasons. They're very compressed and they use what's called the Valsalva maneuver, which is the whoop, right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Our body designed to do it for emergency reasons when we
Mhm.
really need to lift something heavy,
Yeah.
but they're constantly doing it. And then to make matters worse, they wear a weight belt, which means they're creating a super amount of intra-abdominal
Yeah.
pressure, which will restrict their diaphragm, their hip flexors, their belly, put all this pressure on their organs.
Mm.
That's a different story.
Mm.
But a barbell deadlift is just not functional because nowhere in nature would anybody, there's no way I could ever lift 600 pounds of anything in real
Mm.
life.
Mm.
So I'm going to do a barbell deadlift, compress my spine, and create all these problems with my organs, my intra-abdominal pressure. So to lift heavy weight, sandbag training is where it's at, you know?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so as we go functional, it's about sprinting or walking. More foundational is walking. So working on exercises that help you move through space horizontally, right? Um, Kettlebells. I mean, I love kettlebell training because they're so versatile. You can do so much
Mm.
with it.
Mm.
Um, and another one. So this is one I think maybe some people miss. I've connected this dot early on. The shoulder. What do you believe? Like the shoulder. What does the human shoulder really evolve to do?
I guess throwing, pulling, like anything rotational, I guess. Overhead pressing maybe sometimes. I guess
Yeah.
throwing stuff most of the time.
Throwing is the one that most people miss in their training. Shoulder training, like you said, yes, overhead pressing is good.
Sometimes, yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't think with a barbell is that great, but that's just I'm not. I like barbells, but for certain things. But okay, so overhead pressing, rotational, throwing is key, right? Our shoulders evolved to not only throw spears and objects and rocks, but also throw punches.
Yeah.
Right? That was our soul. We don't have claws. We don't have
Fight and
teeth.
flight.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
throwing punches was our way of self-defense. And so that ability, that elastic ability to open the shoulder and then close the shoulder explosively, most people, the majority of people in the fitness industry are missing this key. That's why I really love Indian
Mm.
clubs.
Yeah.
The mace. I love Weck. Weck invented the RMT club. I
Yeah.
love I love that RMT club. Um, so these tools can be really powerful because they train the shoulder to do what it's evolved to do, which is
Mhm.
be able to open and then close explosively. And
Yeah.
my shoulders have never felt better since I started doing Indian clubs, mace bells, the
Mm.
RMT club. And
Mm.
so it's kind of returning to what our bodies have evolved to do and orient your training around that rather than this more artificial, machines. A little bit of isolation work or a little bit of
Yeah.
machines can be good, but
Yeah.
if that's all you're doing, you're
Yeah.
setting your body up to be dysfunctional.
Absolutely. So, yeah, just to summarize for people, like, functional training is like just what we were designed to do as human beings, pretty much, right? Which is like to hunt and gather our food and to be able to survive in nature pretty much. And that was basically what the body's designed to do. And when you do think about like the best functional exercises, those are the ones that are actually utilizing the whole body together as a system, like as a unit. Like many times these days you see people saying functional training and it looks totally dysfunctional because it doesn't make sense. If something doesn't make sense to me in my head when I look at it, it can't be functional because the human beings did things that made sense, like with the common sense. We wouldn't do something that would waste energy. Actually, the whole idea behind being a human is to preserve as much energy as possible, which goes against this whole idea about burning calories when you're actually exercising, right? Because we want to be utilizing exercise as a way to be able to enhance our biology in many other ways, but not necessarily to burn energy. And there is many more efficient ways at burning energy than actually, exercising. Exercising does have an important role in building muscle, which contributes to us being able to utilize more energy at rest. But exercising, we shouldn't be using it as a tool to be able to get rid of all of the bad food or bad choices that we actually made, throughout our lives. And to be able to, how would you say, beat yourself up about it, if you feel bad that you're in an overweight or even an underweight state, if you're trying to like build muscle.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I have my opinion on the whole calories in, calories out thing. My master's degree that it harped on that so much, and the whole time I'm like, yes, yes, it matters. If you're trying to lose weight, that's probably the best place to go, is just take in less energy than you
Yeah.
or take in less energy, no, burn more energy than you take in and all that. But I don't know. I've never been a calorie counter. I've always just kind of, if I look at nutrition labels of food, which I always do, the first place I go is the
Of
ingredients.
course. Yeah.
I don't look at
Yeah.
calorie. I mean, I guess the second place I would go maybe is protein, because
Yeah.
I do, you want to get enough protein.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first place I go is the ingredients, and I don't
Yeah.
ever even look at the calories. I don't
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
But you know what? For some people, it's useful. They keep track of their calories, especially if they're so disconnected with their food. Um, but yeah, I think, like, I love the point you made though about exercise not necessarily being a means of burning energy. It's more about, tr- making your body more resistant to the
Yeah.
stresses of life.
Yeah.
Physical stress, emotional stress, mental stress, and making it stronger
Hmm.
functionally,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I do work with a lot of bodybuilders. Bodybuilders, you know, uh, as a sport, if I was going to compare bodybuilding to powerlifting, aside from the drug aspect, which I think is inherent in both of them, steroids and all that.
Yes. Of course. Yeah.
Bodybuilding is, I think, more sustainable or a little
Yeah.
healthier on the body
I
than
I agree.
powerlifting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because at least with bodybuilding, you're not compressing your spine like a crazy amount. You're,
Yeah.
you're using your mind muscle connection, and you're connecting with the muscles.
Yeah.
Especially if you take that bodybuilding and add a little bit of full body functional stuff, I think that's very sustainable. Powerlifting, I'm not a
Yeah.
fan.
Yeah. So yeah, that was leading me into my next question, which is like, what do you think, like, functional training versus, conventional lifting? Why should we, you kind of answered this already, but why should we, focus more on doing the functional training over the conventional lifting? Or do you think that we can kind of marry the two worlds together? Because that's what I kind of do, in a way. I do some functional training in my training routine week, and then I also do like bodybuilding as
Mhm.
well. And I like to combine those together because that's kind of how I started off as a child. I was 14 years old. I started doing bodybuilding because I wanted to lose weight at the beginning. That's all I cared about, how I looked. And that was the first 7 years of my training career was pretty much into this direction. So that's what actually led me down to, falling so in love with that. But then I met my partner, Tina, and she was more into functional training, yoga, mobility, and she kind of opened my eyes that there is a whole nother world to training beyond bodybuilding because in Cyprus, and you're also like half Cypriot, right?
Yeah, half Cypriot. Yeah.
So
You're full
basically here in
Cypriot?
Cyprus, I'm half Cypriot also,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. What's the other half?
English,
English. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
My mother is from the UK and my father is from Cyprus. But yeah,
And you're
back to
you're
what I was saying.
yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead. Go
go ahead. Yes, I was
You live in.
saying that here in Cyprus, the majority of people are not aware about any other form of
Mm,
training. Even CrossFit is so behind here. I mean, it's just like you go to the gym, there is no functional space at all. You know, there's just machines and dumbbells and like Smith
yeah.
machine and cables, and that's basically it. When we were living in Finland, for example, the gyms there, they were massive. They had a huge functional training area. You know, there was respect to, kettlebells, sled,
Mm.
all the good stuff that me and you appreciate, and I think that's so important because that makes people aware that there is some other form of training out there, and that it's a good idea to maybe dabble a little bit into it, to kind of test it out, because then you actually realize, wow, this actually makes my body feel good. I don't maybe feel so bad on my joints. I feel like I can move better. My mobility is better.
That's the key, is like the pain. People just living with pain and accepting it. And
Yeah.
with certain, I won't name names, but there's certain big fitness influencers, really big, that have kind of normalized getting injured in training.
Mm,
Normalized being in chronic pain with training. And I
mm.
don't believe that that's a good message to
No,
send people. And I don't
no.
believe that you have to live with pain or injuries in training should be normalized. Like, sure,
Yeah,
maybe you tweak something here or there,
yeah,
but if you're training, if you're constantly getting injured and you're
yeah,
constantly rehabbing and then injured and it's a cycle, that says something about your training, doesn't it? That says
yeah.
something that maybe your training isn't ideal.
For your
And
body
so, yeah,
specifically.
what's that?
For your body. Like for someone else, it might be okay, but maybe for that individual, it might be
Yeah.
suboptimal.
Yeah, it's about learning what works for you because everybody's different. We all have
Yeah,
different anatomies. We all have different things that work for us, things that don't work. Same thing with nutrition. It's so individualized.
yeah,
Um, But yeah, in terms of the marrying the two, I'm in the same boat. When I first started training, I was big in the muscle magazines. Arnold, Jay Cutler. I was big into the bodybuilding. That's how I got started. I was a skinny kid that wanted to put on muscle. And as I learned more, then I got dabbled a little bit in the powerlifting world, not so much like competing, but just lifting really heavy weight. And then I got into the yoga world. I stopped lifting weights. I went the other extreme. And even yoga, as much as I love yoga, I think that if people only do yoga, it causes hyper mobility. And I
that's it.
see this in the fitness industry too.
Yeah,
There's a trend of like being super stretchy.
yeah,
That's not a
yeah,
good thing. And
yeah,
actually, when I see people on my table, power lifters are the worst. They are the most dysfunctional. They can't breathe right. They have all these pains. But the second is actually like yogis who only do yoga,
yeah,
especially because if you think about yoga, it's a overemphasis on stretching the hamstrings.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
not really any that much strengthening. I mean, you can create a little bit of internal tension by kind of
Yes.
connecting with like pulling the hamstring. Like let's say you're in a crescent lunge, you're pulling that heel back
Yeah,
and a little bit, but there's an overemphasis on stretching the ligaments and becoming
yeah.
flaccid. And then I see yogis all the time with knee pain, knee
Mm,
injuries, hip pain. So you gotta like marry these things, whether it's whole body functional training and bodybuilding,
mhm,
or bodybuilding and yoga, or functional training. I think should be the pillar for everybody. I mean, that's what
mhm.
and a good point that you made too of marrying, like especially bodybuilding and bodybuilding and functional training, is people want to look good. There's no denying that. People want to look good. Functional training can make you look good, right?
Mhm.
You will look athletic, you will look shredded, but maybe it's not bringing up some areas that you want to look extra really good, like maybe your biceps, right? Even
Yeah,
though, in my opinion, a chin up, a supinated grip pull up is the best exercise for your bicep because it works the muscle in both attachments,
mhm,
the elbow and the shoulder. But
mhm.
maybe you want to bring something else up, right? Maybe you do a little bit of isolation work to bring those up. That's fine, and
Yeah.
I'm more. I like that. I do a little bit of that as well.
Mm.
So the hybridization, which has brought me back to what we first started talking about. I'm not a fan of these people that are maybe geniuses,
Yeah,
but they say that my way or the highway, and they want a monopoly on the fitness industry, and they say
yeah,
only FP or WEC's not bad with it. he's pretty open-minded and he's good about it. But like,
Yeah.
yeah, only this way and everyone else is wrong. I'm not a fan
Mm.
of that.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
exactly. I think it's so important to be open-minded and to be able to take like what you find like beneficial for you and to apply into your life. And I think what's important for people to understand that it's not about doing just one functional exercise here and there. It's about having consistency, right? This is something extremely important to understand, that application, like it's great that people are listening to our conversation right now, but if they're not applying anything that we're saying, it's basically useless, right? So if you're not like doing, functional training at least like one workout of your week, then you're not going to be getting the benefits of functional training. You need to have it consistently there. It's not about doing it once every month. You want to have it just as you have any other muscle in your training routine. If you're training biceps twice a week or once per week, then also have some pull-ups in there, have something that's actually training the functionality of the muscle as well. And what's actually really interesting, what I have found is that with bodybuilding, I find that it enhances, as you said, my mind muscle connection, right? And when I'm doing functional exercises, I feel like I can connect to my muscles like
Hmm.
even more. And I feel that that's a really nice way, to connect the two worlds together, because you kind of see the value in each other. And also, as you do the bodybuilding, it can make you pretty strong, which can help you lift like bigger weights, kettlebells or whatever, especially if you're doing both of the things in a training week, in a training cycle, and then that's carrying over to the next week. And I think that a lot of the times why people who do functional training alone, why they cannot grow their muscles, is because they don't take into consideration the progressive overload principle. Like you need to apply the same principle that you do to your biceps, like lifting a little bit more every week or doing a bit more reps or more sets. The same to your pull-ups, to your swings, to your battle ropes,
Yep.
to whatever you're doing, because in that way, that's the way that you actually guarantee that you're going forward, because we're creating a stress that the body is never getting used to. Like we're always going a little bit more than last time, but of course we need to make sure that our recovery and our rest is adequate, because if we're stressing the body out, obviously that's digging a hole. We need to be able to refill that hole before we can actually come back bigger and stronger and more functional than before.
Yeah. Yeah. Too. I think for people like when it comes to, let's say, functional training, I think there's more of an emphasis on the explosiveness, which I believe being explosive and
Mm,
being able to go for like a kettlebell swing, being
mm,
able to tame the arc and relax when you need to relax
yeah,
and explode, that's at the
intention.
essence. Yeah, that's the essence of functional training, right?
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
bodybuilding is more in the kettlebell world, they call it more of a grind, right? I don't know if
Mm,
you've done, I've done the Strong First certification as well.
mhm, mhm,
And there's two types of exercise: ballistic, such as a
mhm.
kettlebell swing, a snatch, anything where it's constantly moving
Yeah,
and you're controlling,
preserving
and then a grind,
energy.
which is, well,
Pre-
yeah.
yeah,
Go ahead.
no, preserving energy. That's all I said.
Yeah,
Yeah,
preserving energy,
yeah,
not being tense all the time, right?
yeah.
And then a grind where you are tense all the time, like a shoulder press or a bicep curl. And obviously, we should all do more ballistic type exercises, more explosive, because training your type 2 explosive muscle fibers, your fast twitch muscle fibers, I believe is the fountain of youth. I
Mm,
believe we lose that as we get older,
yeah,
and we need to train that to keep it, because
yeah,
that's what's going to keep us strong and healthy later on in life. And
yeah.
if we could develop it now at a young age, we'll be much better off later on.
Absolutely.
And in terms of the grinds, the regular exercise like a bicep curl, you get more out of it and save your joints, I believe, when you focus on the eccentric,
Yeah,
the negative. So with a
absolutely.
bicep curl, don't ever to never focus on the weight. I mean, you should focus on the weight in terms of, like you said, progressive
Yeah,
overload and going up.
technique is very important.
Yes, because the eccentric, the negative, is where the muscle damage occurs. And you have to do less reps,
Yeah.
which means you're going to save your joints in the long run. So, doing the bodybuilding type isolation work in a smarter way is key. And the first place to start is tempo, making your eccentric the negative longer, and then maybe even like just a bicep curl, like you lengthen, right, short, slow, 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 and then explosively contract. I think that that's a better way to to do that type of work. And I mean, the pumps you get
Yeah.
is crazy, the soreness, the
Yeah.
muscle damage, the
Yeah.
growth. Like
Mhm.
that's the sweet, and that's how I love to use the bodybuilder, because bodybuilding has a lot of principles that are really good. I think
Absolutely.
it gets lost with the drugs, and that's my biggest problem with the bodybuilding. I mean, I see a lot of people on the drugs, and
I mean, that's
you
just
know,
people's choice, you know. I feel like everyone should have like the decision to do whatever they want, you know, whether they want to take
yeah,
psychedelics or take drugs, you know, for bodybuilding, whatever they want to do. Like it's everybody's own decision, right? But like I think that it's so important for people to not miss the value for all that other stuff, you know, that is kind of in the way. Like it makes it look like a peer that it's not something that you should do. But when you look at women, for example, when you look at Tina, like my partner, when she also does, you know, bodybuilding with me, and she has such a great physique, for example, and many people admire her physique, and that people admire my physique as well. And they want to look good, and they want to feel good, and they want to move well. So if you want all the things, you need to be able to harness all these principles that we're talking about, you know, to incorporate progressive overload, bodybuilding, and functional training into your weekly routine. Because you know, if you find value, if it helps you, and if it makes you feel good, if it doesn't cause you any pain, I think great. But if it's causing you discomfort, if it's causing you more harm than benefit, then I don't think it's worth it, you know?
yeah. I mean, that being able to distinguish between the discomfort and pain is key. If it's
Yeah,
uncomfortable, then I say lean into that, right?
yeah,
Like do more of the things that are uncomfortable.
yeah,
But if it's pain,
yeah.
listen to the pain.
Yeah.
And I actually see the trend, like I was talking about the big influencers that I won't name any names, but talking about kind of graded exposure therapy to pain. So desensitizing yourself to the pain to be able to do more. And in terms of this, he's talking about powerlifting. I think that that's the worst advice. And he has the person I'm talking about, a big platform, you know, that a lot of people listen to what he says. And
Hmm.
I think that if there's pain, you need to listen to that. Your body is a lot smarter than your ego.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I think we need to listen to when the alarms are going off, listen,
Hmm.
because if you
Hmm.
don't, you're gonna get injured, and then your
Yeah,
body's gonna get the rest that it's been begging for.
yeah,
Discomfort and pain,
absolutely.
being able to
Yeah.
distinguish between pain and discomfort, I think is uh, the physical maturity of a person.
Mhm. So talking about pain, then that brings to mind like knees over toes guy, you know, the guy who
Yeah.
popularized doing the knees over toes exercises. And I remember when I started doing these exercises, it wasn't really comfortable like at all because my knees would crack a lot and you would hear a lot of popping and whatever. And there was a bit of discomfort. I would say that maybe afterwards, after a couple of sets or reps, my knees would start to hurt. So there would be actual pain like behind the patella or below the patella. But then I found that the more I did it, meaning I took an adequate rest, like 1 week, and I went back at it again, I found that it got easier and easier and easier. But what you're kind of saying is that pretty much because the difference is that I wasn't increasing my load on my body, right? I was still using my own body weight to become more resilient to my body weight. But the difference is that what you are saying is that if you are a power lifter and your knees are hurting and you're constantly keep on loading more and more weight, eventually your tendons or ligaments may just collapse, you know, and give up because then, you know, your body is just under recovering because if you have that chronic inflammation there as well, there's constantly wear and tear and there is never regeneration as well. And that goes back to again being in a parasympathetic state or giving your body enough time to fill that hole back up which you have dug, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So is it like the pain that you felt? I mean, you were using your body weight, so
Yeah.
you're a lot less likely to get. I mean, it's
Injured.
possible, but you're a
Yeah.
lot less likely to get injured
Yeah.
when you're just doing something body
Yeah.
weight than you are with you're deadlifting 800 pounds,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
Um, so I think that that's the key. And in terms of like the ATG, like the knees over toes method, I think it's very beneficial to strengthen your knees. Um, and I actually I think Ben Patrick, I think he's a great guy. I really actually like. I think he's very authentic, and
Yeah.
I like his energy.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, but I've dabbled in that as well back in the day. I didn't necessarily, obviously this is my personal preference. I see that maybe for people coming back from a knee injury or
Yeah.
I think it's beneficial
Hmm.
to do a little bit of it. But I
Hmm.
don't think that should be the staple of people's training because
Yeah.
again, if you do more of the functional stuff, the whole body stuff, then you're training your body, your ankles and your hips to take over the
Yes.
stress of the knee,
Yes.
and then your knees aren't
Yes.
going to be hurting as
That's
much.
true. Yeah, that's true. I mean, you need to consider also like my background where I came from. Like I was very dysfunctional in the first 7 years of my life. I was training only bodybuilding and I did have a lot of aches and pains. I didn't practice any mobility. I never warmed up or cooled down after my workouts. I was just this classic bodybuilder, just went in and out of the gym, ate chicken, rice, and broccoli, and that's all I knew. And now I do exactly the opposite. Now I have a very like holistic diet, holistic training routine, holistic lifestyle. Everything is natural as much as possible. I try to, take what's important and what's useful. And now I can safely say that when I do those knees over toes exercises, there's no cracking, there's no pain. I can go like all the way down and lean my head back on the floor, and there is literally no problems at all. And I feel so grateful for implementing those exercises into my training routine. But as you say, I do believe as well that if from the beginning my squats, for example, were as full range of motion as they should be, or I trained my body in full range of motion throughout, as a system as a whole, then my fascia wouldn't be, so tight and jammed up in all the places because, the body is like a massive, the fascia is like a massive spider web, and you know this, right? So if you're tight somewhere in your body, it's going to affect wherever else in your body. So where the source of the pain is doesn't mean that where the problem actually is or where it's originating from. And so, yeah, I think it's super important for us to be able to like incorporate different training methods and to be able to see like what's actually useful for us.
I mean, another thing too, and this goes a little bit more into the nutrition aspect.
Yeah.
But especially people with low back pain, and I think this is actually not really, this is often overlooked.
Yeah.
Inflammation in the gut. If someone
Absolutely.
is eating
Yeah.
something that's not agreeing with them, or if they're eating food that is causing inflammation in the gut,
Yeah.
your psoas muscle, your deep transverse abdominis, which is your deepest core muscle that protects your spine, is going to be inhibited. So if
Yeah.
there's inflammation in the gut, the deepest muscle, that vacuum muscle in the bodybuilding world, is going to be inhibited. Therefore, you are going to have low back pain that stems from inflammation in the gut because of something you're eating, something you're doing, one of your habits. So that's why, like this beautiful thing we call the body is so complex because there could be so many factors
Yeah.
for so many different things, so much pain. So there's like different things you need to look at.
Yeah.
Um, so in terms of this lady's question for low back pain, yes, I think that this front load that you carry
Yeah.
needs to be balanced out by strengthening the posterior chain,
Hmm.
specifically the rhomboids, which
Hmm.
actually leads me to another thing. A lot of times personal trainers or online coaches will say, "Oh, if you have forward rounded shoulders, then just work your back more." And then what do people do? They usually do lat. They when you think of back, they just exercise their lats, whether it's pull ups, pullovers, rows, and those are great. And you should have strong lats. But the connection of the lat, the way it connects more to the front of the humerus. So if all you do is strengthen your lats and your lats get tight, they will actually pull the shoulders forward even more. So when we say strengthen your back, yes, have strong lats,
Hmm.
but we actually mean strengthen your rhomboids.
Hmm.
Rhomboids are the muscles that pull the shoulder blades
Hmm.
back. That's the key.
Hmm.
So yes, have strong lats, but you want to strengthen the rhomboids because that's actually what's going to restore more of that optimal posture.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I would add on to that as well, like make sure that your mobility on your chest as well is good because if you have a tight chest,
Mhm.
that's also going to pull your shoulders forward. You see many people who are desk workers who don't exercise at all, or if they do exercise, they don't really focus on doing full range of motion in the gym. And, I feel like the true way to gain mobility is to train exercises through full range of motion rather
Yes.
than trying to do stretching, excessive stretching. Because when you do excessive stretching, what happens is like, okay, when we talk about passive stretching, there's 1,000 forms of stretching, right? So if we talk about passive stretching is not the most ideal thing to gain actual mobility. Maybe it's good for enhancing blood flow or some other, or relaxation, some other kind of situation, but context is everything when it comes to how do you apply a specific stretch or an exercise. So we want to be stretching the muscles under load and expanding the muscles, right? To be able to taking them to the full range of motion, showing the body neurologically that this is where I want them to be. I don't want them to be in a fully contracted state on the front of my body. I want them to be nice and open and relaxed when I'm not training them. And then the way that we can achieve this is by training all muscle groups in the body through full range of motion. And this is the beauty where bodybuilding is actually able to sometimes release a lot of the muscles. Like I've had many issues over the years as well with my muscles. And sometimes when I've had a really good workout, and because I always focus on full range of motion, I find that my muscles are a bit pain-free afterwards. So it's like it's a true miracle. Like when you pay attention and you connect with your mind-muscle, system, and you're able to actually tap into your muscle through your brain, and to feel like, okay, now I'm starting to release the muscle. The muscle is starting to understand that what I'm doing is safe. So I'm showing it like neurological safety, and now I'm able to relax the body.
Yeah, loaded mobility is very powerful. And actually, just a practical tip for anyone listening, especially Melissa, when it comes to lengthening the pecs or stretching the pecs, my favorite way to do loaded mobility, let's say that you just did chest. Let's just take a regular, someone who's just doing the dumbbell presses and all the flies, cable, all this. I like to end that workout by taking a foam roller, laying over the foam roller so it's actually along your spine, and then taking dumbbells, light dumbbells, in the bottom position of a fly, and just allowing the weight and gravity to kind of pull that open.
Yeah.
But also maintaining a little bit of tension in the pecs.
Tension.
So you're
Yeah.
not like just letting it pull your shoulder back passively,
Yeah.
but a little bit of tension there to
Yeah.
functionally stretch the muscle. And I think that that is very powerful. Also, in terms of hypertrophy, because let's say you just tore the muscle fibers
Yeah.
up, then you go into this loaded mobility, loaded stretch,
Yeah.
and you're almost giving that muscle space to
Yeah.
grow. And you're gonna improve your posture, because if you just do, let's say you just had a chest day and you just did a lot of
Yeah.
pressing, your pecs
Mm.
are gonna be tight. You're gonna be in this forward rounded position. It's gonna throw everything off. Your head carriage is gonna come forward, which is, I mean, that's a whole nother nightmare to have. You're never going to be able to relax if you have forward head, because it constantly puts tension on your vagus nerve.
Mm.
That's a different story.
Mm.
But also with tight pecs, the pec minor, which is a small pec, the smaller pec underneath the major one, when that muscle is tight, and I see this all the time, it's one of the biggest impingement points for the brachial plexus. So any of you at home listening to this that have tingles, numbness, shooting, pain that goes down your arm, one of the major points to look at is your pec minor. And you can release that yourself with a lacrosse ball. I teach all my people who have
Mm.
problems with this there
Mm.
how to do that. But yeah, pec minor is key. And the second, if you're wondering what the another big impingement point of the brachial plexus is, your scalenes in your neck. But especially the pec minor, when that muscle's tight because you're forward rounded, you're working at a desk, you do too much
Mm.
chest at the gym, not
Mm.
enough of that loaded mobility we just
Mm.
talked about,
Mm.
you're setting yourself up to have brachial plexus impingement, which
Yeah.
is all the sensations going down the arm.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I found like one really great like self-myofascial release technique for that area or pretty much the entire chest. I like to start from the bottom of the chest, and I start with my arm down and I lift it up, and then I work my way up, and I just keep on doing this, and I squeeze basically as hard as I can, and I go into pretty much all the areas of the chest as I do this. And honestly, when I do that, I feel like my neck muscles are just so much more relaxed. And it's pretty incredible how you realize that these muscles right here, they travel like, behind the chest, and it's actually the chest is actually contributing to neck tightness. It's pretty wild.
Yes, yes. And what you just described is what we call in my world a pin and stretch. So it's very powerful. And actually, it'll be even better. I'll try to
Hmm.
demonstrate. If you shorten the muscle, so you bring your
Hmm.
arm forward,
Hmm.
then you pinch, and
Mm.
then you open. So you
Mm.
shorten,
So
you
it's
pinch.
like a fly
Yes.
almost.
And
Mhm,
it's even better if you do it and then you also you don't just abduct the arm, but you also open it with a little bit of external rotation,
mhm. Cool.
like that. And
Awesome.
that's a big technique I do all the time on people. But yeah, pin and stretching is very powerful. That's a good one that you can do on your own as well.
Mhm.
Um, you could have someone do it on you. It's very simple. Pin and stretch is a very simple technique.
Cool.
So
Yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
think
you
we're
already
providing.
intuitively you knew that because you're in tune with your body now.
Yeah, I mean, I was just like, figuring things out, like grabbing. I do that with my biceps sometimes as well. Like, if I feel that my
Yeah.
shoulder is tight on the front, I feel like, okay, I need to massage my bicep and just work it here. And then afterwards, I'm like, oh, my shoulders feel great afterwards. It's crazy how the whole body is intertwined and interconnected. I think that we're providing like so much good value and information for people here. So it's really important if people like rewind or whatever after we have posted this on our pages, or I'll also be reposting this on my podcast as well, that Fitness Wisdom podcast on YouTube and on Spotify, so people can always like rewind and watch it afterwards. So the next thing I wanted to ask you was like, what are three of your favorite or best functional exercises in your opinion?
Okay, in no particular order, because that would be
Yeah.
difficult. I like what I call is a swinging lunge. That's
Okay.
actually one of my favorite exercises. So
With
I
kettlebells.
with yeah, you could do kettlebells. More advances with a sandbag, but
Mm,
it's basically you. I have one of the latest posts. I need to get back into posting regularly, which I will be. But it's basically a lunge where you swing the weight to the side and then you
right.
come up and then you there's different
Mm,
levels, but the
yeah,
major
yeah, I
level is
get
you
it.
like switch directions and you go to the opposite way. I love that
Mm,
exercise for so many reasons. Um, so swinging lunges with a kettlebell or sandbag or even body weight. When I
mhm.
first teach people, it's with body weight.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I mean, kettlebell swings. I don't know. Kettlebell swings have a sweet, like they have a place in my heart. I love heavy kettlebell swings.
Like
Uh,
double or single kettlebell.
uh, I like single, but I do double as well. If I do double though, I like doing double snatches.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, I love the cycling snatches. They're my favorite. Straight from the top, straight down. Oh my
Yeah,
God, they're
yeah,
so.
yeah. I love double
Yeah,
double snatches with I use competition bells for that,
yeah,
which
yeah,
is like the colored
yeah,
ones that are all the same size.
yeah.
I love that. Those feel great. Um, Man, it's hard to pick three because then could go into the Turkish get up or the gladiator get up or any kind of get up.
What?
But also I love Indian clubs and maces. I mean the mace,
Yeah,
the basic mace swing. Like I love mace work. Um, okay, so if I only had to pick three,
yeah,
let's just pick three.
yeah.
I'll go with a get up, whether a Turkish get up or a gladiator get up. I'll go with a swing, whether it's a swing or a snatch. We'll just put that in the same category. So a kettlebell swing of some kind, including snatch. Let's put the swinging lunges in that too, because I'm just grouping these all together. And then one for the shoulder, which would be an Indian club swing or
Hmm.
a mace swing.
Hmm.
But then I can go into the sandbag lifts too. Three is too
Yeah,
hard. If you
it's
give me
hard.
five, it'd be easier.
It's hard. Yeah, 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 it's hard. And so for the audience, like, what do you think, like, three exercises, which would be if they were to add them into their training routine from next week, what would be the most valuable exercises that they could implement? That could also include sprinting. Sprinting also counts as a functional exercise.
Yeah, the thing with sprinting though is somebody has to be very like you don't start with sprinting.
Yeah.
Sprinting
Start with
because you could
walking.
hurt. Yeah, walking. Walking would be good, but in
Yeah.
terms of actual like exercise with intention,
Yeah.
a get up. I would say a
Mm.
get up will serve people for their entire lives. And if there's only one exercise that I think everybody should be doing from whether you're 10 years old or whether you're 80, if is a get up. Because if you continue to do a get up, if you continue to just have get ups in your exercise, think about if you're 80, 90 years old and you can get up from the ground. Like I think get ups serve people for their whole lives. Another one would be I I like lunges. I think lunges
Yeah.
are, I would actually put, for me, I would put lunges just a little bit higher than squats in
Mm.
terms of
Oh
priority
yeah,
because
I
lunges are
think so.
more, you believe, yeah. Just
Yeah.
because, I mean, I think squats are great. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not saying squats
Yeah.
are bad. I love
Yeah.
squats. I squat all the time. But
Mm.
I think lunges are more functional
Yeah.
because one, it's unilateral. So
Related
you're,
gains.
and it mimics walking. It
Yeah.
actually makes you walk
Yeah.
better. And I
Yeah.
do what's called an athletic lunge. I don't actually, I kind of just came up with that.
Hmm.
I didn't come up with an athletic lunge, but just calling it an athletic lunge
Uh-huh.
where it's like you're kind of leaning forward. It's like a little bit of a hinge, and it's like you're about to shoot forward into a sprint. And
Mm.
then, so any type of lunge, especially an athletic lunge,
Yeah.
which a swinging lunge is considered an athletic lunge, in my
Mm.
opinion. So a get up, a lunge, and then some kind of throwing exercise.
Mm.
The easiest way to start, you don't even need equipment, knuckles, and then you just do some body weight halos. That's
Hmm.
where I always start people, being able to get your arms around your head. Then that obviously works your way into a kettlebell halo.
Mm.
And then you work into Indian clubs, which is like, getting
Hmm.
the shoulder this way, and the mace
Hmm.
bell,
Yeah.
where it's like with a mace. So those three. If I for someone at home that wants to get started with functional training, a Turkish get up or a gladiator get up, just a get up in general,
Hmm.
lunges, athletic lunges in particular, where it's a different than a traditional lunge, and the some type of swinging motion with the shoulder.
Yeah.
Indian club maces, kettlebell, halos, those three.
I would agree, like with all of those, and especially with the lunges, because I find that, the lunges are so good because you're getting a big stretch on the hip flexor muscle as well, and I feel like we all sit too much, in our daily
Yeah,
life. And I find that, the lunge is strengthening not only so many areas of the leg, like the quadricep, the glutes, the hammies, like, but it's also stretching the hip flexor and the psoas on the leg that's behind, right? And the bigger the lunge is, like, which is also another concept of the knees over toes guy, right? The big long lunges with your knees over your toes. This is a very functional way to teach your body how to move, and then that you're also building more resilient knees. You're increasing your ankle mobility. You're also building strong glutes, and especially with that forward intention that you're talking about, people have very, very tight glutes. And one very easy way to stretch your glutes is by doing it through strength training and functional training, and by putting more intention into the length and the range of motion of those exercises. So I think that lunging is, yeah, really, really important. And with the overhead exercises, though, like, I remember when I started doing maces overhead, I invested like in a 6 kilo mace, which doesn't sound very heavy, and I'd never done mace swings before, and so I started swinging it behind my head, and I thought my shoulders were going to come out. And the thing is that my shoulders were just so stiff and dysfunctional that my body was not used to having my
hmm
elbows in this position, in this like stretched out position, because these muscles right here were super tight. And then basically I had tightness, in my shoulders, and my shoulders was crack every time. So I invested also in some club bells afterwards, which were single hands, and
club.
I
Yeah,
found that when I had the club bells, the steel club bells, it was so much easier. So I could start to do those single arm swings, and
yeah,
I could build that rotation round. Once I did quite a bit of time with those, like maybe 3 months afterwards, I could swing the mace no problem. And so it was just all about that repetition and getting my elbow used to moving in that nice round range of motion. And then I think it's so important for people to not go too heavy when they start doing functional training, especially when you're using functional equipment like maces or club
yeah.
bells. Start light, because light feels really heavy, especially if your body is dysfunctional, until your body is actually starting to understand to connect the dots together, and the system is working together, the core with the shoulders and the chest, and everything is working together. Because at the beginning, you may be just using purely your shoulder, and that's not how it's meant to be when you're doing swings.
And you made a good point. I don't think people should start with the mace. I never
Yeah.
suggest going right into the mace. The mace is harder than an Indian club
Yeah,
or
clubs I
a
love.
club bell.
Yeah.
Club bells are a little different than an Indian club. They're like the heavier, big ones.
Yeah.
I think Indian clubs, they're like they start at like one
Yeah.
pound, 2 pound. They're
Yeah.
really light.
Super light.
That's
Yeah.
where I start people to get
Mm.
first, like like just getting the shoulder back behind their head. and then being able to actually get that synchronicity of the shoulder moving the way it's supposed to. And then with the mace, the first exercise that I teach people with the mace is a simple pendulum, where you just hold the mace behind your head
Yeah,
and you
yeah,
just swing it back and
yeah,
forth, where
yeah,
you're just getting used to that, and that opens the lats, that gets the shoulders over their
yep,
sockets.
yep.
And the great thing about these tools, maces, clubs, they decompress the shoulder. And it's a different decompression than just passively hanging on a pull-up bar.
Activation is fantastic.
Yeah, active or just passively hanging on a pull-up bar, if you do it a little bit, like I think that's okay. But if you're always just like passively hanging,
Yeah.
that destabilizes the
Oh
shoulder and
yeah,
you're going to be more likely
absolutely.
to,
Yeah,
yeah. So I think that a better decompression of the shoulder is using these tools. And then a healthy compression, the best like duo, Turkish get-ups, where you're holding the kettlebell and you're in the kettlebell
yeah,
world, they call packing the shoulder, where you pack the shoulder into its sockets and then you move through. I mean, your Turkish get-ups are great. I mean, your shoulder's literally moving through all different ranges while maintaining that stability and that healthy compression. And
yeah,
then you superset that, or you put that in with Indian club swings or maces. That's like the best for your shoulder.
absolutely. Yeah. So why is movement important throughout our daily lives?
Oh man, I mean, movement is even if it's just a walk, even just going out for a walk will help people, because our bodies are meant to move. We're meant to be always on the move, right? And then we rest when we moved at the end of our day, and then we eat and we chill. But in this day and age, with the computers and the phones, we sit too much.
Yeah,
Everything becomes stagnant. And I know you talk a lot about the lymphatic system, and unlike the blood, which has a heart to pump, our lymph depends on
yeah,
movement. And our lymphatic system essentially is our immune system.
yeah.
So if you're not moving, you're going to get sick a lot more because of
That's
the
true.
lymphatic system
Yeah,
being stagnant and
yeah,
causing all kinds of problems for you.
mhm,
Obviously, hormones. Your body needs movement because your hormones won't work properly. Testosterone, even more than just testosterone, all the hormones, the
mhm, yeah,
neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, all the endorphins. Like, even if it's something as basic as walking more,
yeah,
even if it's something as basic as like, I mean, I love qigong.
yeah.
Qigong. I taught my dad qigong. He's 85 years old, and qigong is, he says, is like for older people. Qigong, I believe, walking and qigong, do those, and you'll live immediately. It'll put you in a better space.
Absolutely.
So I mean, movement is life, man. Like if you don't move, you're
Yeah,
gonna become stagnant and
yeah.
eventually be more likely to die.
Yeah, exactly. And as you said, like, if the fluids are not moving well, because the lymph is yeah, based on the muscles moving as well, but also if the blood flow is not getting to the muscles, we are also restricting those muscles from oxygen and nutrition, and then that metabolic waste getting out from the muscles as well. So basically, muscles are dependent on that, on the flow of the blood. And if they don't get the flow of the blood, then they're going to be starved, and then they're going to start to contract, because that's what the body does. It starts to contract you up. It starts to tell you to pay attention, like, I need you to get moving. And pain, as Dr. Perry Nicholson says, pain is a request for
Mm.
change. So when you're getting the
I
pain in
love his
your body,
work, by the
it
way.
is amazing,
I saw
right?
you talk to him, and I was like,
Yeah,
yes, bro. I stop chasing pain. For those of you not following
yeah,
him, I
yeah.
suggest go follow him. I love his content.
He's such
I
a
love,
legend, right?
yeah.
Because he tackles everything from so many different perspectives. He talks about oxygen, he talks about lymphatics, he talks about blood flow, he talks about nervous system,
The
talks
vagus
about the
nerve,
vestibular, the vagus nerve.
He's big on the
Yes,
vagus nerve, and I'm big on the vagus nerve because of my hiatal
absolutely.
hernia healing work. And the vagus nerve is so, and I just, yeah. Anyway, he's great. Follow him. That's all I gotta say.
So, so how can we, like, let's give people some ideas about, how can they break their routine up in their daily life if there's somebody who is in an office or whatever and they have a sedentary job. Like, what kind of tips can we give them to be able to get more movement into their daily life? We already talked about movement, which is fantastic, but let's say someone is sitting down 8 hours a day, and every hour, like, would you suggest that they get up for 5 minutes? Like, what would be your recommendation?
I'll say a couple things. First, get a standing desk if you can. That
Mm,
doesn't mean you should stand the whole time,
yeah,
but I think that just constantly moving back and forth. If you
mm,
sit at a desk for 8 hours a day, you're gonna have problems.
yeah,
So being able to switch, like let's say you sit for 20 minutes or sit for an hour, and then you stand up and you just like, shift from one leg to the other while you're working. One, your
mhm,
brain's gonna work better, you're gonna do better work, but then your body's gonna thank you in the long run. Yes,
absolutely.
scheduling maybe more walks, going every hour, maybe like walk to the bath, even if it's just a walk to the bathroom and you do, I mean, this will be a little bit more, not advanced, but a little more, thorough. But even if you just do what in Qigong we call a little shaking or bouncing,
Yeah,
like
bouncing. Yeah,
doing some of this,
yeah,
getting that lymphatic, getting the movement going. If you can spend more time outside, if you can like go for a little walk outside, obviously,
yeah,
people live in places with crappy weather, I guess, sometimes, so they can't, but
yeah,
being outside is key. And then one thing that I suggest to everybody that sits at a desk or stares at a computer screen or a phone screen for long periods of time, especially if they have headaches, is every hour or ideally every 30 minutes, take a break from looking at a screen, look outside a window, and look as far as you can look. Look as far as you can see, the furthest point, and do that for even if it's 30 seconds to a minute,
yeah,
will change so much because, again, evolutionarily speaking, the human eye evolved to like scan the
yeah.
horizon, to look far away, scan for threats,
Hmm.
or scan for, dinner, scan far away. And when we look far away, our eyes actually relax, they open up to allow more us to focus far, far away.
Yeah,
And when that happens, when our eyes relax and we look far away, it signals to our nervous system that we're safe. Because if we're looking far away,
yeah,
most likely we're not getting chased by a lion,
yeah,
right? We're
yeah,
not, we're like looking far away. It's like, parasympathetic nervous system activates and you calm down.
yeah,
When you're
yeah,
always looking close up at a screen, that's signaling your nervous system, oh my God, like we gotta like it's fight or flight. Like, okay, we're either working on something. We're not designed to look that close for
yeah,
so long. It's
yeah,
gonna cause eye tension, cause all
yeah,
these vision problems, cause tension
yeah,
headaches, right? The suboccipital muscles right here
yeah,
have direct correlation with your eyes. So people who have headaches back here or even up here,
mhm,
uh, look far away. That's
mm,
something that we lose in our everyday life because we're always, whether it's a screen with a computer, and then what do
mm,
people do when they're not working on a computer? They look at their phone. And what do they do when they get home? They watch a TV and everything is
yeah,
close,
yeah.
So
So basically, that's feeding into the nervous system state. Basically, what you're
yeah,
saying is that if our body is like all the time perceiving something up close, we're all the time activating our sympathetic stress state, which is creating this tunnel vision, right? And then that's not allowing us to absorb all of the beauty that's in the environment. But when we're looking somewhere further away, we're able to receive like more information, and our nervous system is able to feel relaxed because nervous system works always to keep us safe and to keep us alive. And the more information that we're able to give it, the more safe it can feel. And this is why I'm a very big fan of barefoot shoes, like,
Mhm.
trying to, do eye exercises, doing primal movement, outside on all fours, because the more of your hands and feet are on the ground, bare feet, and feeling the earth and feeling the ground, the more safe your nervous system feels. And I think that's one of the coolest thing about doing things like primal movement and moving on all fours, things like animal flow as well, because not only is it making you resilient against gravity, making you a badass against gravity, so everything is becoming strong and functional, but you're also feeding your nervous system something extremely positive. You're telling your body that when you're a baby, you are crawling on all fours, and your brain is being built like as you're crawling on the floor, pretty much. And the reason why our brain actually grows is because we actually stand on our 2 feet. So that's actually one of the coolest things, that when we realize that the majority of the brain is devoted towards movement, and how important movement actually is for our nervous system state, then we actually need to realize, oh, that's why I need to walk more. That's why I need to wear barefoot shoes. That's why I need to do eye exercises. That's why I need to do like primal movement, because this is where I came from as a human being, right?
And that's functional training in its essence, doing what our bodies have evolved to do.
Yeah.
That answers that question of what is functional training.
Amazing. Amazing. And so tell me like the benefits of sprinting. Like why would someone wanna incorporate sprinting into their training routine?
Yeah, well, it's not for everybody. So I would say like you have to have a certain level of fitness before you start because it's very easy to injure yourself.
Mm,
So I need to make clear that sprinting is not for everybody. It's very taxing on the body, very
yeah.
taxing on the nervous system. So I would not sprint any more. I would say the upper threshold is twice a week.
Mm,
Maybe even once a week is enough for some people,
absolutely.
especially
Yeah.
women.
Mm,
Women, especially because women, their hormones or their hormone balance is a lot more delicate, and it's a lot easier to throw them
yeah.
off, especially like with cold plunges or something.
Yeah.
Like you wanna be gentle, a little more gentle for the ladies out there with this really type of intense. Because sprinting is the most intense workout there is.
Yeah.
There's no denying it. Like,
Absolutely.
but the benefits are huge. I mean, huge. Like, okay, first of all, from a biomechanical standpoint, you're developing functional flexibility.
Yeah.
When you look at a sprint, when that back leg is pushing back, it's a hip flexor stretch.
Yeah.
You're stretching the psoas, you're stretching the quad, you're stretching the front line of the body, right? And it's functional because yes, it's stretching, but then it's also you're asking it to stretch and then to explode, stretch and then
Yeah.
explode, which is what our
Yeah.
body's designed to
Yeah.
do. That's the difference between functional stretching and dysfunctional stretching, like
Yes.
many, yogis or passive stretching people do,
Yeah.
just so they
Yeah.
look cool for the Instagram, or like
Yeah.
stretching these pretzel. That's not, it's not, you're destabilizing joints. It's not good.
Yeah.
Or if that's all you do.
Yeah.
So functional flexibility, the strength. I mean, think about the difference. Look at marathon runners, people who run long distances. Look at their physiques. They look frail, skinny, weak, because the body will adapt to whatever you put on the body. And for long
Absolutely.
distance runners, the body needs to make the muscles smaller,
Yeah.
but it needs to have more mitochondria, more ATP. So while the
Yeah.
muscles get the weaker and smaller and less able to explode, they have more ATP so they can sustain those long runs.
Mm-hmm.
But you end up looking frail, you end up
Mm,
being weak, and
mm,
you end up, there's muscle wasting and all that.
mm.
You look
Yeah.
at elite level sprinters,
Hmm.
they have the best physiques on the planet.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
look at for those of you like go and Google elite sprinters. They're shredded, they're muscular,
Mm,
they're strong as heck. Like and sprinting will make you stronger and
yeah.
more powerful
Yeah.
because the muscles are being asked to, like I said, you get that flexibility, like that full range of motion, and then explode. Type 2 muscle fibers are the biggest. So you're training that, you're going to look great. And
Hmm.
then also, I mean, it boosts your testosterone through the roof. I don't think there's any exercise that's better for boosting your hormones than
Yeah.
sprinting. Um, it boosts all your endurance. Like if you sprint, you're going to become more resilient to any stress that life throws at you
Yeah.
because there is nothing more stressful to the body than a full out sprint.
Mm,
So if you do it intentionally and you don't overdo it
yeah.
and you allow your body enough time to rest and to get into that parasympathetic state like you've already talked about,
Mm,
then it's so powerful. You will boost your testosterone for the entire week. Every exercise or every workout that you do for the remainder of the week is going to be enhanced.
yeah.
Um, so, so biomechanically, you get that functional flexibility, that strength, that power. You're gonna look great because there's nothing better for your physique than sprinting. Burning fat. It's the only form of cardio that makes you burn fat and build muscle at the same
Yeah.
time. You know. But again, I would say like there's different levels. So like the best form of sprinting is obviously running, right? That cross body pattern that gets into WEC method,
Yeah.
head over foot, that
Yeah.
spinal engine, right? Being
Oh, yeah.
able to like orient the body in this rotational pattern.
Hmm.
WEC method is big on that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, then the second level, because it's not for everybody, I would say is on a bicycle, but
Yeah.
standing up, like
Mm-hmm.
standing on the bicycle,
Hmm.
not sitting,
Hmm.
because when you sit, you're just your hip flexors are not going to get that functional flexibility.
Range
So
of motion.
standing,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, you're not getting that range of
Yeah.
motion, and you're gonna maybe cause more dysfunction. So standing on a
Yes.
bike,
Yeah.
doing intervals or going full speed intervals
Mm.
are great. And then the third level for people that want to start, but obviously they would hurt themselves if they try to sprint. I guess any form of cardio
Yeah.
equipment, maybe a stairmaster or something that not a bike where you're sitting, because again we already talked about that,
Yeah.
but like doing intervals, doing something where you go 100% for like 20 seconds and then go at a slower pace for like 60 seconds.
Yeah.
Incorporating some of that interval style training.
Yeah, definitely. Really great advice for sure, because sprinting is a super hard task. And if you think about it, most people out there, I observe, always when I walk out on the streets, like how do people actually walk? And I see many people with their feet, like they always walk with their feet like ducks, splayed
Yeah.
out. And I feel like if I put that person to sprint right now, they're probably gonna hurt their knees, they're gonna wreck their back, they're probably gonna tear something. And the reason is because their body is like, so dysfunctional from the foot upwards. And it might not be their fault. It's just that no one has brought it to their awareness from a child, that some habits that they developed over time, that they, started positioning their feet in this way. Many people say that, oh, it's genetic and whatever. Yeah, you can have, maybe genetically, you may be born like with your feet like slightly outwards or whatever, but you can train that. Everybody can train anything pretty much in their life, and they can become better at it. Someone may have a talent, but even if you're not talented in something, you can still train it and still become really good. So I think it's really great advice that what you just said about the sprinting, because if we don't have good like biomechanics to begin with, it's very important to start with something which is a bit more structured, like an elliptical or a stairmaster or a bike or something like this, which is already
Mhm.
guiding your foot position. And for everybody who is listening, who's not aware about this, I think it's super important that you pay attention to your foot positioning when you walk and you run and you do anything relating to gait or climbing upstairs, because the way that your knees travel like over your toes is like super important, right? If your knees are traveling on the inside of your toes and your toes are going that way and your knees going that way, you're going to have a whole lot of like inner knee pain, on the medial side. So you want to definitely pay attention to that, try and strengthen your feet. And that's why myself and Zenios, we, very big advocates of barefoot shoes. So the next question which I wanted to ask you was, what's your thoughts on barefoot running or sprinting?
Yeah, but real quick though, just to piggyback
Go
off
ahead.
a
Go
point
ahead.
that you made,
Yeah.
uh, if someone's not walking well, they're not going to run well, they're not going to sprint well.
Yeah.
So that's what we talked about initially. While sprinting is the pinnacle, I always start people with how are you walking?
Yeah.
Let's do exercises to make you walk
Yeah.
better. Because if you don't walk better,
Exactly.
it's like building a foundation on a house of cards.
Foundation.
You're gonna injure yourself. In terms of barefoot shoes, I mean, I've been on the Vivos. I've worn Vivos since like what 2018, 2017, and I'll never go back. You know,
Yeah.
back when I was deadlifting, like this was years ago when I was, in the 600-pound deadlift club, I was wearing Chuck Taylors, because I thought they were flat. But the problem is they were squeezing my toes and very narrow. So I'm a big advocate for barefoot shoes. Now, if someone, especially ladies out there that wear high heels all the time for work, or for people who have always been wearing, the big comfy shoes that are really bad for your feet and in
Mhm.
turn bad for your whole body, I don't actually suggest starting with something like a Vivo. Maybe I start with like a Zero with an X, because they have a little bit more cushion. And it's an
Mm.
easier transition from regular
Mhm.
shoes to
Yeah.
more barefoot style shoes. I
Yeah.
see now, I always get these ads for, I don't know the name, Purvita, some other brand that they look nice, but they have the toes are free. I
Right.
forgot the brand
Oh
name,
yeah.
but
Yeah. Peluva. That's the brand. Peluva.
yeah. They keep coming up on my ads,
Uh-huh.
and I bought too many Vivos, so I'm done with shoes for now. But I was like, okay, maybe that's the next step.
Yeah.
But for people that maybe don't even want to buy shoes, Maybe you
Yeah.
just spend, when you're at home, you
Yeah.
go barefoot.
Yeah.
No shoes, no slippers, no socks, and you spend more time barefoot.
Yeah.
Maybe if you have, you're beginning to have some bunions, which are when your toe goes like this,
Yeah.
then you could do some certain exercises where like you have a band that pulls your toe and then you do some like raises or you wear toe spacers.
Yeah.
But the feet, like you said, it starts from the ground up.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've heard of the Gray Institute. That's another modality of training and a
Mhm.
philosophy of movement that I really like called the Gray Institute.
I haven't
But they're
heard of.
big on the ground reaction forces. Everything begins and ends with the way that our bodies react with the ground.
Yeah.
And that means our feet and our ankles.
Perception.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's very key that we have strong feet. And another point, and this is key for kettlebell swings or squats or lunges or any exercise where your feet are on the ground, your big toe and your glute are connected. So when people are exercising or they're doing squats and their feet are all wobbly and their big toe is coming off of the ground, your glute is not going to fire properly. And you're not going to get as much from the glute, which means you're going to have to compensate with your back or something else. And so having that big toe stay on the ground and engaging the floor with all your toes is key. But if all you're doing is wearing these comfy Nike shoes that have an inch of plastic or foam, you're not going to be able to engage your toes properly and you're going to have problems, right? So big correlation. Big toe and glute are connected. So engaging the ground with your feet is key. Barefoot training, whether you take your shoes completely off or you wear something like Vivos or Zeros or whatever that P brand is that we just talked about. Um, yeah, I'm a big advocate. I've been on this barefoot wave for before it was even popular, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Same here. I've been once I swapped my shoes to barefoot shoes, like once I bought my first pair, I was like, okay, I was fully convinced that this is the way forward. It just came, I had one ad maybe like 6 years ago, or like across my timeline on somewhere on social media, and I just thought like, oh, I'm just gonna buy them and see like how it goes, because I was more interested in it for lifting, and lifting heavier weights. And when I did that, then I noticed that actually it did benefit me massively in my training. And I started to read about all the other benefits, of being barefoot, like having more space for your toes to move and to be able to sense the ground better and to have better posture and to be able to have better reaction time, like you mentioned, and all that
Yeah.
good stuff. And to be able to, like, your body basically reacts better and quicker when it can sense its environment, like we said. And if it cannot sense its environment, well, it feels threatened and it stiffens up. So if your mobility sucks, it might be because you're wearing cushion shoes like all the times. Even if you, let's say, are a person who practices mobility training and does a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, but you still are suffering with mobility or restrictions, then maybe you want to look at your feet. Maybe you want to look at your eye health. You want to address some of the areas of because if your eyes don't move well, obviously your brain freezes up. So
Yes, that's a huge missing point.
yeah,
That's a huge your eyes,
eyes, yeah,
huge
yeah,
missing point. And anyone with a forward head like this, your eyes are not going to work properly because these muscles, your suboccipitals, are directly correlated. They're called your suboccipitals because these actually control your eyes indirectly. So if they're not working properly because of forward head, your eyes aren't going to work properly. And like you said, if your eyes are not working properly or the muscles aren't like doing what they're supposed to do, everything gets thrown off. Because like you
so
said, you're not being able to you're not able to perceive and react to the environment correctly.
yeah,
Your body's always going to be in fight or flight because you can't feel the ground with your feet. You can't feel with your hands, right? You don't have that palpation, and you don't see well with your eyes.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
key.
going back to like our ancestral origin, we never used to wear shoes. We used to be like grounded like 24/7 to the earth and to the earth's magnetic field, and we're
Hmm.
receiving all those negative like electrons, which is amazing for our biology as well. But if we did have to wear something, we would wear like leather, which would also be conductive to the Earth's like magnetic field, right? And that's like another downside of wearing very big and cushioned shoes. I know that there's not many brands out there that do like grounded shoes, but I guess if you want
No.
to ground, it's better if you're just barefoot. But at the same time, like, for the foot health, I think it's super important to invest in a high quality barefoot shoe. So anyway, Zenio, I think this was such a fantastic conversation. And since I'm going to be repurposing this on my podcast as well, can you tell everybody where they can find you and connect with you?
Yeah, so my Instagram is Zenergy Fit, but with two Z's. So ZZ Energy underscore fit. I believe I'm TikTok as the same name, Zenergy Fit, and then my YouTube as well, Zenergy Fit. So just everything is Zenergy Fit with two Z's. And I haven't been posting recently, but I'm launching my online program soon, and so once I do, man, I'm gonna be. My goal is to make this style of training more, not, I want to say mainstream, but more accessible to the gym bros out there, right? Because you look at a lot of the functional space, it's like maybe kind of weird or kind of niche, or the gym bros that want to just look really good are, you know, they look at the people who are advocating functional training, maybe they don't look the way they want to look. And so they turn away from that. Oh, I just want to be jacked. So I want to like make it a little more popular and more accessible to people
Yeah.
that, the gym bros out there. Cause I'm a gym.
Awesome.
That's you too, bro. We started out as gym bros, just bodybuilding, eating chicken and rice, trying to get jacked and big. And as we
Yeah.
learn more and more, this style of training is where it's at. So I want to make it
Yeah.
more palpable for the mass, not the masses, but the people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's super, super important. I think everything that we talked about today was absolutely valuable for everybody, whether if you are trying to get into training or if you've been training for many years already, if you've just been, training traditional bodybuilding, or even if you're in the functional training space, like I think it's super important to just extract everything that's useful, as we just mentioned, and like put it into practice and see what works for you and discard whatever doesn't work, and just go from there, because everyone is bio individual, and I think that we can all like benefit from taking some of this knowledge today. So thank you so much, Zenius, and good job. Nice conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me, brother.
Awesome, brother. I would love to do it again sometime.
Absolutely.
This is the Fitness Wisdom Podcast.